Hey guys, welcome back to more Karen's stories. In this video, a neighbor completely loses it when I deny her entire family access to my private pool. I had to kick her off my property. Let's dive right into the video. And the first one is a story from r/neighbors from hell. To preface this, there's a rental house across the street from my home that recently had some terrible neighbors who got evicted, that I'd previously posted about on Reddit. Well, lightning struck twice and even worse neighbors moved in. So less than a month ago, a new family moved into the house across the street from mine. This house had previously been occupied by 3 families who had a crew of kids and a basketball hoop that resulted in over $7,000 worth of damage to my vehicles and a case pending in small claims court from the kids jumping on them and climbing on them. They were not evicted until I filed a lawsuit against their landlord about non-compliance with a no-contact and no trespassing order. The new family seemed nice enough. It was a husband and a wife and 2 boys ages 6 and 12. It was refreshing to not have the ragtag crew living across the street from us for the first time in about 4 years. Every morning the kids walked to the bus stop with the mom and the guy would go to work. Nothing at all seemed out of the ordinary whatsoever. Well, about a week ago, the 12-year-old was out in his driveway with his little scooter doing tricks and I was taking my dogs, 2 border collies, out of the house to go for a walk. Then the 12-year-old ran over to my driveway. Initially I thought that he was only wanting to pet the dogs, but instead, he started kicking them extremely hard in the side. My older of the 2 dogs started yelping, and at that point I yelled at him to stop and pulled the dogs back into the house. I ran across the street and started knocking on the door to the house, and all I could see is the 12-year-old making faces and flicking me off through the front bay windows. My wife, who was home at the time, noticed the older dog limping and not putting weight down on his back leg, and some red marks on their side through the fur, so she rushed them to the emergency vet for evaluation. I closed the door and locked the house up good and called the cops. Both of the family vehicles were in the driveway, making me think that everyone was home, but they knew their kids screwed up and they were avoiding me. I reviewed our security camera footage that showed the boy running over and starting to kick the dogs unprovoked. Being a smaller town, the police arrived very quickly and they took my statement and I showed them the footage. They asked if I had any prior interactions with the child and I said no. The police officer was rather nervous and asked if the boy was special needs or something like that, which I was unaware of. He called a family law unit in before he went to talk to the family across the street. When the other unit arrived, it was not more than a minute later that I heard a call on the radio for an ambulance. Well, come to find out, both parents were in the bedroom coming down off of heroin and letting the kids run wild. The parents were taken away in an ambulance for evaluation, and the kids were removed from the house by child services. My older dog suffered from blunt force trauma to the leg and my younger dog had a giant bruise on the side. Luckily, they were not injured any worse by the boy kicking them. So today, I'm coming home from work and I see the parents for the first time in a week since this happened. The man comes over and I'm expecting him to apologize when he says, "What you did was effed up, man. My kid didn't hurt your dog. And if I ever see you walking those things, I'll make sure they're actually hurt next time. You'll be hearing from our lawyer." I didn't say a word to the man, but my dog, who can barely walk now, begs to differ on his opinion that his son did not hurt him. Thankfully, we have pet insurance and only had to pay the deductible of the $1,400 vet bill. I notified the officer who took my statement and had been working the case of what happened, and there's a police vehicle over at the house right now. I don't even know how to proceed in this situation. Update: the man was arrested again for criminal threats and there's civil protection order in place now. The officer said there's a very low possibility he'll be coming back to this address after the way the booking went. Update number 2, I got a call from the police department and early this morning, the woman who lives there was arrested last night at the police station after they took the husband in. They are getting arraigned today on the child neglect and drug charges, but are pending for their criminal threats and assault on an officer charges. And yeah guys, there were no further updates to this story, which leads me to believe that OP is free of these crazy neighbors now and they are not causing any trouble anymore. And the next one is titled, "Neighbor Karen loses it when I deny her family access to my private pool." So I wanted my own private pool for years. Being a dad and a husband, that doesn't necessarily mean that I wanted it all for myself, but instead for my family. I like to keep my yard neat, but I don't have a fence. I don't see a point to a fence with no outdoor pets. Now, my next door neighbor was not someone that I would consider a neat person. She also does not have a fence, but this just means that when she doesn't have the patience to take care of her dog, she just hooks him up to a pole in her backyard. At this point, the circle of the dog's domain was certainly well fertilized, but only the weeds were taking advantage of it. Those very same weeds that I have to fight off with very proactive weed and feed as they try to spread to my yard. What grass she has is still overgrown, it's just overall a disgusting backyard. I also don't have a privacy fence, but I do have movable screens that help protect us from the view when we are in our backyard. It's more than enough of an encroachment and a nuisance to have to deal with her sad excuse of a yard, but she is constantly invading my yard and talking to me with this strange pretentious familiarity. She will ask me questions about my miracle yard or laugh with me about her bad parenting methods as if I would treat my kids like trash just because they are in their rebellious teen phase. All this mess and the awkward interactions would be enough to make me sick and tired of this Karen, even without the final horrific act that she bases on our friendship. That being her expectation that if she makes a mess in my yard, she is absolved from any need to fix it. If she ever walks her dog, she likes to take him on a couple laps through my yard so he poops before she will take him any further. Then she leaves it there. So she once told me that she makes sure that he poops in my yard because she is tired of people griping at her and is glad to have our neighborship allow her to not be so inconvenienced. She said this to me immediately after I went to her house to complain and ask her to clean up after her dog's mess. She has also taken packages off my front porch to protect them from thieves. She did give them to me afterwards, but they had clearly been opened and awkwardly resealed. I started sending my packages to the post office and just picking them up to not deal with this horribly entitled behavior. Her teens hit my car while she was teaching one of them to drive, and she just put a note on my windshield saying, "Thanks for understanding." I've honestly tried incessantly to be reasonable, and she just doesn't get it. When the work started on the pool, I went to Karen. Over the course of a few minutes, I reiterated incessantly that this pool was to be my private pool for just me and my family. She was happy to see me, but then confused and badly hurt that I would feel the need to come and speak to her like this. I ignored her complaints and had her repeat my request back to me to make sure there was no way she could claim stupidity or any kind of misunderstanding. So instead, she decided to claim masterpiece levels of stupidity. The pool was completed quite a few weeks after this interaction. It's a beautiful paradise in my own backyard. I grilled a few days after it was finished. My wife and 2 kids were out celebrating with me, and it's funny that the youngest should not be old enough to swim comfortably, but she has taken to water like she was born for it. It was a beautiful day and a beautiful memory that I will cherish. If I wanted to, then I could cherish it with a video recording of the entire day thanks to my security camera installed specifically with Karen in mind. The no trespassing signs I put out are less attractive than the rest of the memory, but just as necessary. Either way, the celebration we had must have given ideas to certain people who could figure out what was going on or without the privacy screens blurring the details. It's the same thought process as a dog. She knew she wanted to, and she knew she was not supposed to be using my pool. So Karen waited for a weekend when my oldest had Little League. She didn't realize I was unable to go and thus was left at the house waiting for appointments I had to keep. These appointments were later in the day though. I ended up deciding that I would go grocery shopping to fill the morning rather than stay in the empty nest. Now I installed the security camera and signs with Karen in mind. I clearly am expecting that she'll trespass at some point, and she still managed to surprise me. Karen brought her husband and their 2 teenagers over to the pool once I drove off. They dragged the cooler through my yard, no wheels and no lifting it all the way, actively dragging it across my yard that is full of beer, and mom and dad are not the only 2 drinking, even though one of their sons is just 14. They had a collection of tacky pool inflatables with boxes that I doubt even had the chance to get picked up by the garbage truck. Finally, they brought a grill to make some hot dogs as if they hadn't have a care in the world. They likely had their grill ready for the right day after I caught her inspecting and trying to use my grill, which led to me locking the grill shut when it's idle. I get back from grocery shopping and spot the activity. I tossed the cold items in the fridge or freezer and then rolled my sleeves up. Karen, we spoke about this, I say as a greeting when I walk out into the backyard. Her husband stays quiet as he stands over the grill and watches, and her kids are whispering to each other and chuckling. "What was that, OP?" she asked. "We spoke about this. This pool is private for me and my family. You are not to use this pool. I need you to pack your things and leave." On command, like someone was preparing to become a trained thespian, Karen suddenly had tears running down her face that was already glowing with red from lack of proper skincare. "I cannot believe you're behaving like this again, OP." She stomped and moved in a way that can only be compared to toddlers throwing a tantrum. "We're supposed to be neighbors, but you are really not putting in the effort I do. Your family was not using it, so what's the issue if we do?" The issue is that this is my yard and my property, and I've already made it clear to you that this pool is for my family alone, regardless of circumstances. If you want your yard to not just be a communal space, then you should just add the fence. Now go back to whatever you are doing and just be content, and you'll get your pool back when you need it. My pool. You even just now called it my pool. I kept it from being a communal space when I built it on my property, so now I will ask you again. Leave my yard right now. At this point, Karen's husband has stepped away from the grill and is choosing to get up in my face and badger me for supposedly bossing his wife around. Meanwhile, the teens are passing a beer back and forth while insulting me and betting on how bad their dad can beat me up. I don't want a fight, and I especially don't want to start one, so I went about collecting various pool floats and an ancient boombox that was sitting quiet. I carried an armload and went to drop it on Karen's side of the property line. At this point, I genuinely was concerned that I was about to get attacked by Karen's husband. Luckily, she beat him to it when she ran at me shrieking about me moving her stuff. She screamed, "I will call the police on you." I dropped my second armload and shrugged at her. "Go ahead." Karen's husband had an uncertain look on his face, but she shooed him away and made her call. The police arrived pretty quickly. She actually called the emergency line and accused me of assaulting her and her two teens. The police took our statements separately, but glanced at each other often, with the one taking Karen's story looking pretty annoyed. The cops asked to see my footage, and as planned, the no trespassing signs are even clearly in the frame, so it's obvious that they were posted at the time of the trespass. That's more than enough for them to inform Karen that her family is very clearly trespassing. She blusters and bumbles and bursts out with, "He's just doing this because he's a cat person. Those cat people are always committing hate crimes to us dog people." The cops tried to ignore this, but she insisted on reporting me for a hate crime. They finally told her that she could come with them now, or she could get arrested for trespassing and filing a false police report. I ordered some more robust privacy screens and installed them semi-permanently to protect the pool from Karen's prying eyes. The pool was a decision for the family, but nothing is better than relaxing after a hard day while soaking my legs or doing a few laps without seeing Karen's death glare. And yeah guys, if you had an awful neighbor that constantly trespassed on your property to use your pool, what would you have done? Let me know in the comments. The next one is a fantastic malicious compliance story that you don't want to miss. Years ago, I worked in a satellite office of a large department, 300 plus people, in a giant corporation. Half of the staff had salary and benefits, while my half was hourly contractors. The department was run by two vindictive women who were wholly responsible for the toxic environment. They loved talking about how much they were like sisters. I love pointing out that when you have sisters like them, one of them ends up under Dorothy's house. Like most companies, they were constantly blowing smoke up everyone's ass about how much we are valued, and they showed that by inviting us to an appreciation potluck. There were gonna be surprises, let me tell you, and delicious treats from our coworkers. But of course, the other shoe inevitably dropped. The company was providing only soft drinks, as alcohol on company property is forbidden except when it isn't. The only food at this appreciation potluck was what employees were expected to make. Nothing store-bought, share some love with us, and they couldn't put it in writing, but it got around that failing to cook something would be noted. It is tough when the company won't give you a budget, but it is tone-deaf and insulting to demand people give their own time to prop up the illusion the company cares when half your staff does not get health insurance. The participation non-mandate came straight from the top, and I wanted them thoroughly, inescapably embarrassed. 2 days before the potluck, while on a call with my boss, I dropped the live grenade in her lap. "Boss, oh, before we go, I wanted to ask why you declined my Outlook invite for tomorrow afternoon. What is up?" Me: "Oh, I need to leave early tomorrow to cook for the potluck since I assume you cannot authorize overtime for it." Boss: "Overtime?" Me: "My recipe takes an hour or so to cook and the actual potluck is another 2 after business hours. So I was gonna leave 3 hours early to keep myself at 40 hours this week." Boss: "Wait, you expect to get paid for cooking?" Me: "Well, half this staff is hourly contractors." Does this for-profit company expect 150 contractors to donate 3 or more hours of their personal time for their own appreciation meal? Boss: oh my god, nobody thought of how this looks. She was asking herself more than me. Me or nobody expects to be called out on it. Boss: but who's getting called on it? Oh, you're at your desk where everyone can hear. Me: correct. Boss: I have to go. I did feel bad about dragging her into it, she had enough on her plate, but I knew she would just toss the grenade up the chain to people who get paid to know better. Our satellite office was not privy to many details, but I'm told that my call sent people panicked and scurrying around at the mothership, consuming a day and a half of a lot of people's time. Mission accomplished. In the end, they moved the potluck to lunchtime, during paid time for contractors, and bought our office pizzas, only our office. We were, however, instructed not to be eating the pizza when we Skyped in, because everyone else would get upset. And yes, all the satellite offices were Skyping in like this was the Dunder Mifflin Infinity launch. And now let's move on to the next story. It starts like this. A few years ago I decided that I was gonna spoil myself after I got my tax refund, and I spent it on an outdoor jacuzzi. I'm a single father and I knew that both myself as well as my son would enjoy it. Whenever we went on vacation and a hotel had one, he would get really excited about it. He was 15 at the time of this story, so I figured he was old enough to be safe, even though we had a rule that no using it unless I was at home. I had a little garden area with a deck and the spot was perfect for it to go. Right away, the jacuzzi caught the attention of my neighbor Karen, who sure lived up to that name. She felt that she had a right to use the jacuzzi because she could not afford one, and I was throwing it in her face. I have zero clue how getting something and not even talking about it was throwing it in her face, but I will chalk that up to her just being a Karen. She did not even start off asking if she could use it and instead jumped right to trespassing through the bushes that separated our properties and used it while I was not home. I caught her running back to her side the other day along with her kids who used it too. I decided to put up signs that said no trespassing, as well as putting up a fence between the properties instead of just the bushes that she could easily get through. My son was actually the voice of reason to me that told me that I shouldn't let my guard down. He explained to me exactly what a Karen was and that he had a feeling what I did was not gonna stop her. I could tell that he was upset about the home being trespassed on, and I assume it also scared him a little bit. After putting up the signs, this Karen neighbor became even more crazy. I think I forgot to mention that I'm living actually in an HOA, aka Homeowner Association. This Karen neighbor was an HOA board member and he felt personally insulted by me putting up no trespassing signs, and he claimed that the signs and especially the fence were violating HOA bylaws. One day I got into a screaming match with Karen right outside my house when he once again urged me, or rather threatened me, that he would sue me if I did not remove the fence and the no trespassing signs. My son heard everything and I had to talk to him to calm him down. I assured him that I would keep an eye out still for Karen, and if he saw her coming onto the property to tell me. Like most 15-year-olds, he listens to the parts that he wants to and decided next time Karen snuck onto the property, he tried to handle things himself. I heard yelling, and as soon as my son's voice was part of it, I went to go and look for him. I found him in the backyard and I just caught Karen slapping him across the face. She was wet and I assumed had just come out of my jacuzzi where he caught her. Her 2 kids were still in the water. Seeing my son get slapped kind of made my body move without my mind even thinking. I was a wrestler back in the day, and I guess I still remembered stuff because I had her on the ground in a minute. I told my son to go and call the police. I kept her on the ground like that until the police came and told me to get off and let her up. She started screaming that I had assaulted her and wanted me arrested and sent to jail. That I damaged her young children for needing to witness the whole thing and not letting anybody else speak. I walked away with one officer so I could explain what happened with my son. Son, I came outside and saw her in the jacuzzi with her kids. I told her to get out and off of my property, and then she got out and started screaming. I threatened to call the cops on her for trespassing, and that was when she slapped me. I did not even try and lie about my role, and I admitted that seeing him get hit put me into some sort of protective parent mode. The officers assured me that I was defending my son on my own property, and since I did not actually hurt Karen, I was not gonna get arrested. Karen, on the other hand, was now getting a mouthful from the police about breaking into my property and clearly ignoring the signs I put up. I did not catch her entire conversation, but by the time I finished, I managed to listen in on some of it. Karen, I have the right to use that jacuzzi. He is going to show it off. My children deserve to swim too, and he shouldn't have the rights to stop me. Cop, ma'am, this is private property, and he owns the jacuzzi. He does not have to let anybody else use it, and you're ignoring his desire to be left alone. That's a problem. You could very well be arrested today for trespassing. Do you understand that? Karen, you don't care about my kids either. You want them to cry and then be scared even more seeing their mother taken away. They look terrified right now because of all of you bursting in here. Cop, I think they're scared because their mother is yelling. How old are your boys? Karen, they are only 8 and 3 years old, and now they're going to grow up all messed up because of you and OP. Cop, ma'am, you're aware that putting a child as small as 3 in a jacuzzi is extremely dangerous, right? Cue Karen getting a lecture on things that I didn't even know regarding jacuzzis and small children. Apparently, they cannot regulate the temperature as well as adults, so any child under 5 years old really should not be in one, especially considering that he cannot touch the bottom and there is zero safety in place for him. After she screams at the officers more for telling her how to parent, they clearly had enough of her. They arrested her for not only trespassing, but also endangerment of a child. And of course, assaulting my kid as well. She also admitted to leaving the 3-year-old in the jacuzzi for long periods of time and even leaving him there with only his brother to watch him. She seemed to find no issue with it and said that the warm water was good for children and the CDC did not know what they were talking about. The kid had a medical examination after Karen was arrested and well, they found both old and healing burns caused from being in the hot water too long. Her not seeming to care was the final straw for the courts and she was found guilty and being sent to jail for both the child endangerment and the trespassing, with the children being put into the custody of the state. I don't know how laws work with her getting them back once she's released, but I really hope that somebody else gets to raise those boys and she has to stay far away. As a parent, I could not imagine being that uncaring about the well-being of your child, especially one that young. Even with my son getting ready to go off to college, I'm still a nervous mess wanting to make sure that he's gonna be okay. I hope that she learns a lesson in jail, but based on what I've been told and read about Karen's, I doubt that will happen. She will most likely think the entire thing is my fault for the rest of her life, and I can live with that if it means her kids are now safe from her. Before we end the video, we will read a funny story from r/PettyRevenge that is titled, "Don't wanna put the shopping cart where it belongs? Fine." I was picking up my newly rescued cat from his surgery. The surgery center is next door to a huge grocery shopping center, so of course people and the carts. Well, I'm pulling into a parking spot and this mom sends her kid to put her shopping cart directly in the parking spot I was literally turning into. The kicker is the cart return was directly behind her car. The following happened. Her kid had to run back to the car and buckle up, so I jumped out of my car to grab the cart. She's smiling at me like I'm doing a favor, but nope. I take the cart and place it directly behind her car so she cannot back out. I get back in my car and park. As I'm walking to pick up my little guy, I hear her get out of her car and yell, "BRTCH!" I don't turn around, but I do yell, "Teach your kid to return things where they belong and you wouldn't have an issue." I don't get why people are so lazy. And yeah guys, please subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and I will see you again tomorrow.